it's clear that AI dominated a lot of the conversations across, doesn't matter what stage you were on, what topic it was, AI clearly bubbled to the top for a lot of them. What I hear when I speak to people from banks is there's a lot of, again, I don't think this is a big secret, concern, reluctance. It really depends on what part of the bank it's touching. I think if it's a tool that's increasing productivity, fraud monitoring, financial crime prevention, another hot topic. Every time, again, AI was used, that was one of the use cases that bubbled to the top. Much more, likely to make its way into the operations of a bank than some of perhaps the more, forward-looking use cases that have been discussed. The other thing I thought was interesting, there's clearly a wide range of opinion on what the impact on employment will be. I think people tread very carefully into that space because in terms of your own organization and society more broadly, that's a hot button issue. And there's a lot of fear within organizations, across many different roles. So again, a range of opinions that I've seen across the day. We're at a payments focused conference. A lot of discussion about what's coming in October with the PSR rules on APP fraud and what that means for the banks. And, there's a lot of gray areas, it seems, left within defining, how that responsibility and liability will be shared. So in terms of what's coming in October from the PSR and the shifts in liability, what I've heard from the representatives from banks that I've spoken to is there's still a lack of clarity about what some of those rules will look like in practice. So, whether it's defining what a vulnerable customer is, what's the expectation on the customer, what's the timeline. Someone I was speaking to from one of the big banks today was using the example of romance fraud. I don't know if there's another term for it, but sometimes that's 6 months, 12 months, 2 years into the making. And, anyone who's been through that experience of making a payment recently, do you know why you're making this payment? Do you know the person you're making? These are the kind of questions that are popping up in apps. Put your face in the frame. But in this case, yes, the customer does absolutely know who this person is. They trust them. Obviously, the social engineering at play is both sophisticated but committed in terms of putting in a long period of time. In an example like that, who's at fault? So I just thought there were some really interesting issues that were raised when I was speaking to this person earlier, and just that some of the rules would almost be defined by how the financial ombudsman would judge when the cases come before them. So clearly lots for banks to work out, and there's going to clearly this will continue to evolve even after the October deadline. Embedded finance is here to stay. I saw a lot of discussions on stages and spoken to a lot of the vendors at the booth and other attendees at the conference. So that those growing number of use cases in the embedded finance space. So clearly a trend that is not going anywhere anytime soon. The surprise one for me, and maybe because I hadn't really been looking at this space for a long time, I was listening to someone from Ripple earlier on stage, and blockchain is kind of inching and broadening its acceptance. So that was interesting to see. It's definitely, thinking back to the hype from years ago, it's been far more of a slow and steady evolution. There's been some regulation that has needed to evolve alongside that. So crypto's back, but I think there's a more kind of defined set of use cases, and certainly in some markets a little bit more security in terms of confidence with regulation in using it.